The good folks over at Artificer recently sent me a review copy of Showgunners, their tactical strategy game, which plays pretty similarly to XCOM, but set in a world of game shows which are clearly inspired by movies like The Running Man and The Hunger Games, but with a very, very heavy cyberpunk vibe. The game does a really good job of balancing tactical combat with the occasional puzzle-solving session, although you could say that the combat itself is also a puzzle. Visually, the game is decent enough, nothing special, but the colours pop and each area is distinctive enough from those before. The voice acting, again, decent if unspectacular, but I do really like that it's fully voice acted even for minor characters. That's something that you don't often get these days. The music fits the vibe perfectly with a punchy, chaotic soundtrack, and sound effects are similarly good. As for the actual gameplay loop, each episode of the show comes with its own region to navigate with a variety of loot boxes, traps, and puzzles to solve. There's nothing here particularly difficult or taxing, but it will require you to have a good think every now and then. You obviously take part in a number of the game's core turn-based tactical battles. Occasionally, you'll be ambushed by small groups of enemies, but usually the battles will be telegraphed in advance with notification of what enemies you'll be facing so that you can plan in kind. The game show setting is really well done. It's not something that we see very often. The Running Man and Hunger Games combination lends itself really well to a video game format, and Showgunners makes full use of that. The commentator giving you a play-by-play description of events is a really nice touch, and for me personally, one of the highlights of the game. It never gets old, and that in itself is quite impressive. You'll participate in media interviews, sign autographs for fans, and your choices will impact how they view you, which also leads to you receiving sponsorship opportunities. The story feels a bit of an afterthought. It isn't particularly interesting, but the gameplay is good enough to make up for it. New characters and enemy types are drip-fed into the game at a pretty good pace, but key characters don't get enough dedicated time for us to really care about them. Weirdly enough, the main character of the game is probably the least interesting of the bunch, and she's the one that I used the least once I had better alternatives. Each character has got their own unique skill tree, and every character feels and plays uniquely. They've all got their own weapons, movement ranges, combat rewards, perks, accessories, etc, etc, and all of those things help to keep the combat feeling really fresh. Overall, I really like Showgunners. There's a decent amount of content, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Combat is not even close to being the best within this particular genre, but it is a lot of fun either way. The biggest USP here, obviously, is the whole Running Man, Hunger Games game show setting, which, as I said before, is exceptionally well done, and that goes a long way to making this game stand out. I feel a little bit like this is what Marvel Midnight Suns was aspiring to be, similar to the kind of close quarters approach of XCOM. I thought XCOM was fantastic, and its sequel as well, but it can be quite demanding, so I'd recommend Showgunners to anyone who wants to play something like that, but maybe a little bit less complex and intense. One other thing I will say is I think the game's asking price might be a little bit on the steep side. I was obviously sent a review copy, but I would have felt hard done by if I paid the £30 being asked. This feels more like maybe a £20 purchase, maybe £15 on sale. Showgunners for me then is an overall 7 out of 10. It's available now on all consoles, having released recently on February the 19th. It was on Steam for a couple of years. I'll drop all of the links below in the description. Thank you once again to Artificer, and thank you all for watching.